You are now listening to Out of the Blank.
Welcome to another episode of Out of the Blank podcast. I'm here with Janet Mohapi-Banks.
Hi there, how are you doing?
Janet, why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself and what do you do professionally?
Okay, so my name is Janet Mohapi-Banks. I'm an international best-selling author, speaker, and superhero coach for Conscious Awakening.
Okay, number one best-selling author. What are we talking about here? We talking about New York Times bestseller? Because it seems like every book I've ever read is a New York Times bestseller.
Well, no, New York Times is a lot harder than my number one best-selling. But no, I'm Amazon bestseller, but I hit the number one category, hit the number one spot in 21 categories throughout the world, including the top level categories of self-help in 3 countries, which I was just absolutely blown away by. And that's from my book, Habits for Happiness.
So you typically read about self-help?
Yes, this book is all about self-help. It's all about personal development. It's all about creating the life that you really want to live, because there are way too many people in the world not living the life that they want.
Okay. When you write, or you're not writing stories, you're not writing anything of this sort. So when did you start writing? Like, did you just randomly decide, like, did you go through something hard? Usually when someone writes a self-help book, they go through something difficult that kind of, when they get to the other side, or when they feel like, they've overcome their really kind of hard, complicated scenario that they're put in, that they feel like they can give an insight into other people's lives.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the reason that I'm a coach now, and I've written this book in particular, is because back in the day, I was an award-winning luxury cake designer. I was selling my cakes at the Ritz Hotel in London, Mayfair. It's like the fancy dentist of places. I was, in all the wedding magazines, on international wedding blogs, on wedding TV, and all of this. And I developed a digestive disorder that meant that I was literally vomiting multiple times a day for nearly 5 years. I was, under the care of the most eminent gastroenterologist in the country, and they kind of got to the end of the line with how they could help me. So the prognosis was a slow starvation to death, because they did not know how to fix me. So after getting all my will in order, getting provision for my children, then I was just like, okay, so what else is there? How else can I get out of this situation? I'd sort of prepared for the worst, but now it was also time to, reach out to other possibilities. So then I found a chiropractor. She cracked my back. And on the 6th session of cracking my back, there was just the most enormous crack you could ever imagine. If you've ever had chiropractic, have you ever had chiropractic?
No, I'm deathly afraid of chiropractors.
Really? Okay, so it sounds much more painful and scarier than it actually is.
It looks much more painful.
Yes, and like when she does my neck, there's always that sort of little tiny fleeting, oh my God, she's going to break it.
That's what I'm
But she
saying.
never
Like,
does.
you know how simple it would be for one guy to have a bad day and just be like, you know what? I'm not going to crack your neck in the right way. I'm going to do it the wrong way. The next thing you know, you look like one of those commercials for like insurance where like, do you have a painfully twisted neck like this? And the lady's head's upside down. Like, that's always scared the living hell out of me.
Yeah, no, I think you're probably safe in the hands of a chiropractor, if I'm honest. But yeah, she cracked my back, and it was the loudest crack in the world. And I was just like, oh, but it doesn't hurt. Like I say, it's just like air escaping or something like that.
Yeah, it's like when you pop your knuckles and stuff.
Yeah, I think so.
But sometimes I pop my knuckle, and next thing I know, my finger's a little bit numb. I'm like, okay, I probably shouldn't have done it that way.
So that's because you're not a trained chiropractor.
See, when someone tells me like, "Oh, I'm a chiropractor," I just look at them and I immediately think witchcraft. I'm like, "Get out of here with that."
It's phenomenal. It really is. I mean, I was married to a man for several years that didn't believe in any alternative remedies or anything like that at all, really. So, going to a chiropractor for me was, yeah, it was really thinking out of the box. But now I love chiropractic work. Obviously, I do, because she literally gave me my life back.
Now, this helped medically with you.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. So what she did, she cracked my back. I went to sleep that night, and woke up sort of halfway through the night with the most intense pain in my brain that you could ever imagine. It was like, it only lasted about 20 seconds, and it was like, bzz, 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 and it felt like electricity going up an oak tree. I could feel it going up like a trunk and into the branches and all the little capillary things. And I went back to sleep again. I woke up the following morning, and I was pain-free for the first time in over 4.5 years. And
Yeah, similar to like the impulses that you're talking about. See, I get fascinated with the human mind because, like, a lot of people experience growing pains like when you're a kid, and that pulsating feeling, like it literally feels like your leg is growing or something when you're getting taller. And they always say it's growing pains, it's growing pains. That's kind of the same reaction, but yours is more neurochemistry.
yeah, so what the chiropractor Jade thought was happening was that the synapses were reconnecting. So through all the work that I did with the hospital, they discovered that there was no electrical signal going from my brain into my stomach. And that's why I was vomiting all the time, because food was going into my stomach, but then it literally didn't know what to do with it because it wasn't getting the instructions. So by cracking my back and releasing my nerve, um, she she released the nerve, which meant that the electrical signals could get back through again.
Did they discover what caused all this? Was it because they eating cake? Because you talked about usually like people get, well, I mean, it is kind of, it's funny to look at, but when you look at like diabetes and all these types of things, like indulging in sweets, there's not really a benefit, especially when you're around it 24/7. It's why I would never own a bakery, because I know I'd be eating cake all the time. So when you look at that and all the health issues, and a lot of that are kind of medical things that go into our body are based on nutrition, what you eat, kind of what your body kind of thrives off of energy wise. I mean, that would make sense that, like, if you developed a lot of sweets that your brain might have, or you might have stomach issues. I know when I eat red meat, I won't go to the bathroom for a while because I just haven't had it in forever.
Right. Yeah. No, in my case, it was nothing to do with that. It was to do with the fact that I was spending literally hours and hours a day bent over making sugar flowers. And before that, before I was a luxury cake designer, I was a computer programmer. And so again, that was hours and hours a day bent over a keyboard. And what had
Okay, so
happened, it,
when you're bent down,
mhm.
you lost, I guess, sensor reception. Now, was it all your disc compacted, or was it a certain few? Because I know there's like 4 and 5
Yeah,
happens to do
well,
with like your lower
Jade said
legs, and
that
like once
the
you get up
top
to
of
like
my
the upper
spine
tier, like 1 and
was
2, that
really
happens to do a
compacted.
little bit more with
So
like your neck and your brain.
the spine bits, what are they called? Spiny bits. Your spine is made up of lots of little bits. They were really, yeah, yeah, exactly. They
Oh
were all really,
man,
really compacted and close together, and that was
like near the
probably
tailbone.
from years of bending over and not opening myself up properly.
Those are your angel wings. That's what they call it. I always get nervous when it comes to the back because I'm like, imagine, like, people don't realize how sensitive that actually is. Like, if you actually hit your back hard enough,
Yes.
you can have
So
severe
if
back pain. I mean, I
you
was hit by a jet ski one
T5,
summer,
it was
and I had twisted
T5.
muscles in
It
my
was
back, like a
basically where
bunch of
your
them ripped,
angel
and I thought
wings
I
would
broke my
join.
spine because, like, my
That was
bone, I have a
where it was
protruding
all
tailbone.
compacted.
So, like, the doctor's looking at me, he's like, I think you have a
No,
fractured
up
back.
top.
And I'm like, it's painful to
Where's
even
your
stand up
wings?
right
Where's your
now. It felt
angel
like all my
wings?
weight was on my spine in general. Like, you could
What,
feel it.
down there?
And I
Goodness.
was like,
No.
imagine like so many people that just go around like, falling, getting hit, makes you look at sports, it makes you look at everything. Like, you don't know how sensitive of people we actually are. Oh no, I'll stay away from that witchcraft. You start pulling out dolls and everything. That popping, that cracking always scares me. I don't mind if someone like walks on my back, or, I get my occasional friend like, hey, crack my back real quick. But like, I don't know, putting my faith into
Hmm?
someone that I barely know, I'm like, you just could have one off day. So when you go and write books about self-help, and you came from,
Oh
being a
yeah, no, that's
world-renowned kind
true.
of
But
cake
it sounds like you
designer,
should really go
how
and
did
see a
how did you
chiropractor
decide to
to get
take
over
that
your fear
leap?
of
Do you just decide like you've been through a hard spot, so you decided that you can kind of give a better inflection onto other people's lives on it?
it. Oh, you've little faith. That's terrible. Mhm. Okay, so because I mean, like I say, the prognosis was that I was going to die. I did not expect to be here for my son's 10th birthday. He's 13 now. Um, yeah, and I really didn't
Yeah,
expect to
well,
be
if
it.
you
And
have
I
a
think
bad day, like a
that
lot of people don't realize the sense of
like, I
empathy that
really
we
feel like
lack.
I had a
When we
second
start
chance of
lacking
life.
more empathy for others, we create
And
a negative
I
energy
know,
out there that we
I
kind of put
know
out in the
that
world.
I'm
That kind of
here
makes
to
it more
help
difficult to
people
kind of get around and get
because,
what you need
why else
done.
would, and, I'm not religious or anything like that. I don't believe in God. But I do believe in, like infinite intelligence and universal energy and things like that. And I know that we are all connected. Everything is energy in the universe. Everything is energy, and yeah, precisely. So I knew that I was here to help people, and yeah, and I just wanted to help people. So where as soon as I got better, and was able to get up, because like I say, for 5 years I was pretty much bedridden. My husband left me halfway through as well while I was waiting for brain scan results. My 11-year-old daughter, she was 11 at the time, she's now 16. Um, she had to take care of both me and her little brother. And it was, a really awful time. So when I got better, um, my first initial thought was I'm going to take a year off just being alive with the kids. But within a month, I'd already started a coaching business because I knew that I just wanted to help people. I wanted to help people have the levels of success that I had had, but without all the stress, without all the, nearly dying part. So I started as a business coach to do that. And then through various more life happens because it does every day. Um, so then I turned my business coaching into transformational life coaching, because once you look at the whole person, then everything else sort of falls into place. Yeah, and then I sort of went into stress coaching, and now I'm like a superhero coach because I want people to have the best, most ultimate life that they could ever, ever, ever imagine. And like I said right at the top, the majority of people don't realize just how special and precious life is.
Yeah,
So
it's
as
definitely
soon as I
hard.
got better, I knew that I had to help people understand that again.
It's definitely hard for people to see that light at the end of the tunnel because the tunnel feels like it's never going to end. I
Mm.
mean, I'll use a personal story to my own life. I mean, just the other day, and not even yesterday, actually, it was yesterday. I got a nail in my tire. So that's most people are like, okay, you get it fixed, you get it done. That's the fourth tire I've gotten a nail in the past month and a half. I've had to
Oh, that's interesting,
I've
isn't
had
it?
to replace. I know. I feel like some person's dropping nails in front of me or
Yeah.
something, and I'm like, this is 4 times. Luckily, I didn't have to get a new tire replaced. I only had to get it patched. But it's like before that, the week before, I had to get a new tire, and then also at the same time, I had to get a whole new battery. So I don't spend a lot of my money, so I'm very cautious with where with my funds go. So I was just losing money. I'm like, man, there's not even a point in driving out in the world anymore. And sometimes you need to vent. Sometimes you need someone just to kind of like give you like a arm around the shoulder. Like, it's gonna be all right. It gets better. But like all the advice I was looking for was like, well, that's life. It's just this. I'm like, if it's just never ending shit, then what's the point of being around? And after a while, I was just sitting there like, man, I'm just gonna get this fixed. And obviously, it comes from a big section of being overwhelmed. As people, we don't really problem solve effectively. Just like how I experienced, like when something arises like that's so immediate and you weren't expecting it, you don't know how to handle it. So your worst thing is to freak out and cause a giant scenario. but it's hard to see the light at the end of the tunnel when, like I said, the tunnel seems like it's going to go on for a very long time.
Yeah, yeah, no, I get that. But why do you think that you have found all these nails in the road?
I have no fucking clue, to be 100% honest with you. I'll be straight with you. I swear. I'm like driving. I'm like, why? Why? Literally, I went out in the morning. It was like 4 o'clock in the morning and my tire looks flat. I'm like, okay, I'm going to put air in it. So I go put air in it and I'm like, it's telling me it's full. I'm like, what do you mean it's full? It's 4 o'clock in the morning. I don't have time to deal with any like thing else with this car right now. And I'm looking and I just see a nail sticking out. I'm like, wonderful. But before all the other times, it was on the sidewall. So it's very hard to patch a tire if it's on the sidewall. So mine was directly in the center. So I was like, perfect. Let's hope I can get this patched. End up waiting 3 hours before the place opens up, sitting waiting for an hour for a tow truck. Then finally, I get in there and I wait an hour in the lobby and they're like, oh, you're all good, man. He's like, $30. I'm like, what? He's like, yeah. I'm like, thank God. I thought it was going to be like $600.
Yeah, no, definitely.
And
No, I hate tires. They're so expensive.
well, like there's always something that costs something. It's always, it feels like to live this life, not only just taking emotional stress throughout the day and physical stress, you also like the system we kind of run on where it's just money, everything to get anything. And it feels like everything's just payment after payment. You know what I mean? It gets a little bit hard sometimes, especially when you're just like, my age, like 20 years old, just trying to get something for yourself. And like, I started I researched chemical dependency for a long time because addiction like was affecting my area pretty big. And I started noticing a lot of the kids that I graduated with that are all in like their 20s and they're all drinking all the time and partying. And I'm like, do they have it figured out? Are they just happy with life? Because it seems like I'm doing worse off than them when really they're miserable, but the only thing that gets them
Mhm.
through is drinking.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, all things like that is, I mean, people fill the gaps in their lives with various things. People rarely fill the gap with the thing that it's actually called for.
Well, it's always weird because you hear someone, that's always cracking jokes and that's always laughing and that's always having a good time. And you look at them like, oh, they probably don't have a problem in their life when actually they're probably the most afflicted of all. The difference is trying to come above that and trying to see, the way out. And it's like I said, it's difficult. A lot of people choose to kind of just go to bed and totally gloss over it. And then the problem never goes away when you never choose to handle and talk about it or just express your feelings. I'll buy
Mhm.
a punching bag, set it up in my garage, just let a little bit of steam out. My relief is the gym. That's where I get my stress out. It's a
Mhm.
big helpful thing because when I feel there, I can just keep my mindset on one thing and the problems of the outside world don't matter. I think more people need to have that into their life. A lot of people can get that from reading, such as like a book, something you wrote, coming from a perspective of someone that has went through something that is difficult at the time. I mean, you probably had points where you're just sitting there like, what's the point right now? Like, I know you had your kids and everything to keep you motivated to get going, but it probably was just very hard to keep that mindset.
Yeah, no, absolutely, it was. But I don't know. I think that's why I've written the book as well. It's because I know now that there really isn't such a good that there really isn't such a thing as a good thing or a bad thing because you don't know the bigger picture. Yeah. So, like, you might find, I don't know, but you might find that a little way down the line you bump into somebody else that you spoke to while you were sat at the waiting for your tire to get fixed that will help you out down the line. I don't know. Like when my husband left, it seemed like a really, really bad thing at the time. But had he not left, then I never would have gone to see a chiropractor in the first place. And I know that I would be dead.
Yeah, it's
So,
definitely I mean, it's cool to see a self-help book like yourself, the one you wrote because of the concept of, like you said in the beginning, you're not very religious person. It seems like every
yeah.
self-help book you ever read happens to deal a lot with turning to God or turning to some person to believe in that kind of gets
Yeah.
them through it.
So my philosophy is that you are the God. You are the person that you need to believe in.
Well, I think we all know God is Morgan Freeman, but look, I
That's God voice.
when you read or you go to, like, for me, when I went to chemical dependency meetings to study a little bit and learn more about addiction and stuff, I was noticing that everything that was involved into their programs were God related. And
Mm.
whether it comes to AA meetings or narcotics meetings. I was just all these people that were turning to God, and then you get to see the very few that were like, I don't believe in this. So how can I follow your guidelines if you're not giving me anything that I can get into? And it was weird, but I had to bring up a question to this one guy in particular. I was like, "Do you ever feel uncomfortable because you don't seem like a very religious person?" And he goes, "Yeah, it's definitely hard to come into these meetings, but I found my own way, knowing that it relies on my shoulders to keep myself straight." And then looking at his family, he was
Mhm.
able to pull himself out of that. That's why I find your book pretty unique because of the concept of you don't always have to turn to religion. You don't always have to turn
No.
to thinking that there's some being out there that wants you to do good, so you have to be good, but make
Mhm.
that inflection onto yourself, make it
Yeah.
your job to get yourself help if you want it. If you don't want help, then it's not going to ever come. You're just going to do it
No.
for somebody else. And then when you get the chance to slip up, you will.
Absolutely. Yeah, and you've absolutely nailed it on the head. You see, for me, it's all an inner game. It's all an inner game, but we're not taught that. At schools, we're not taught that. We're taught that somebody else always knows better than we do.
Why do you think
Um,
that we're taught that in school? It always seems like, when it comes to the basis of storytelling or anything around history, there's always an object that you have to look up towards or someone you have to aspire to be. But it feels like some of the biggest motivators and some of the biggest, changers of our society or changes in the world are based on people that go and do their own unique individual thing.
mhm. Yeah, now we could go down several paths here. Okay, so the education system as it is set up for the majority of people, especially in the West, like America and the UK and places like that, um, the education system is set up to breed workers. It's
Yeah,
not. It's
gyms that
not.
work a 9 to 5 lifestyle.
Yeah,
And for a lot of people,
absolutely.
that's not the norm.
Yeah, it doesn't teach free thinking. Societies generally don't like free thinkers because they do step out of bounds. They step out of other people's comfort zones. But the fact is, we're not here to satisfy other people's comfort zones. We are here to find the most joy, the most happiness in our own lives. And we can't allow other people to dictate to us what that feels like and what that is. We're sold this story of, if you get the car, you get the house, you get the clothes, you get the girl, you get the boy, you get the whatevers, that will make you happy. But it isn't. That isn't where happiness comes from. Happiness has to come from within, because otherwise what happens is, just like your chemical dependency uh, groups, you keep looking externally for all of your answers. You keep putting the responsibility of your happiness, of your life, in the hands of other people, and they're never going to live up to your expectations. They're never going to. So you fill the gaps. You fill the gaps with drugs, with drink, with shopping, with food.
That's
Whereas when
a lot of addictions lead because of the chemical response in the brain to how we receive the information that we're taking a part of. I think when
Yeah,
it
no, absolutely. But it satisfies all the happy hormone.
it's crazy because when you look at things that proceed, future addictions or just future problems in your life, like there was something you could have done, but you ended up changing your path a little bit. I believe we're all on our own path, and
Absolutely,
we all have to take these walks of life in the way we want them to do. You're the only person that has the keys to your car to drive it.
absolutely.
So everybody else that kind of gives their opinion, they could be helping or they could be hurting you, but they're a GPS in the road. If you choose to listen to their advice, then that's your price you have to pay. I
Hmm.
mean, I can't force you to take a left or do anything in your life. You only have that opportunity to do so. But if I give you advice and you follow it and it leads you down a wrong path, maybe that's something you have to kind of come up with yourself. You have to decide, that was this good information that I got or bad information. And it feels
Yeah,
like, especially with a lot with self-help books, where it does get a lot of flack and stuff, or doesn't really matter what type you're doing, whether it's addiction or anything like that, it feels like somebody is telling them what to be doing. And it's not more about telling you what you should be doing, it's explaining a story, like your story exactly. It's coming from your perspective, which makes
yeah,
it more relatable for someone to actually get into. Because how many times you read a self-help book and the person who wrote it never suffered from anything. They just have a better mindset. And it's like maybe that could help, but it's going to hit a lot more people if it feels like someone who's stuck in the slums starts talking to someone who has been through it.
Hmm. No, definitely, definitely.
So what types of things do you try and express in your book? Because you talk about tips and,
Yeah,
basically habits for happiness,
it is habits of happiness.
name drop of the book. But
Thank you.
like what types of habits though?
Okay, so at the end of every chapter, there's a little exercise that you can do. So it's kind of like a course, really. Um, so there's things like gratitude, because that was one of the things that really hit me when I got well again, is just how much appreciation I had for life now. And I didn't really appreciate my position where I was before I got ill. I was just living, and it was just the way it was. I didn't really have an awful lot of gratitude for the house that I lived in. I didn't really have an awful lot of gratitude for the food that I ate. And it's only when you can start really appreciating just how amazing your life is that things actually change for you, because your perception of life changes. Instead of seeing all the negatives of life, you actually see all the positives. So yeah, we really go into gratitude, and appreciation is a massive one, because even in your darkest days, there is always something that has just lifted you ever so slightly, even if it's just for 5 seconds, that you can look back on and go, oh, okay, that was actually pretty good. And then when you have that initial thought of that was pretty good, that usually leads you to another thought of actually that was pretty good as well. So writing gratitudes out, but not just a list of 5 things that hasn't got any emotional feeling with it. You need to have the emotion and feeling behind it. Now, obviously, my story of how I discovered gratitude is quite extreme. Like I say, I was nearly dying, and it's only through not dying that I appreciated it. But hopefully other people won't need to get to the depths that I got before you can actually start looking at the life that you've actually got, and going, you know what? This is all right. It might not be, sort of a millionaire lifestyle. I might not have the yacht, the plane, whatever's, but what I've got is pretty awesome, actually. It's pretty
That's
good
what
for
makes
now.
it so hard to see that, like the way that mindset is, because of everything we base ourselves off of what people have. We're always constantly judging others. You see a person with a lot of nice stuff, a lot of nice cars, or a nice house or something, then you immediately start examining yourself and seeing like, oh, I'm
Yeah.
not at his position. And
Well,
you throw
exactly.
yourself into a spiraling basically downfall.
Yeah, but that's it. You see, again, we're taught that life has to be a competition. But what if that isn't true? What if you decide, actually, my life isn't in competition with anybody else?
Homeless people, they are the expert minimalists, is what I call them. The reason why is because, the people that choose to be homeless, obviously, but even an average day homeless person has no care for his possessions, has no worth to them at all. On the concept of he under either he, got there's a position that obviously got him to that point, but it's the idea that we are literally holding items as
Hmm.
worth to who you
Yeah.
are as a person.
But that's it. You see, if you base your self-worth on the things that you have, then you will never, ever feel truly worthy, because there will always be somebody with more, and there will always be somebody with less.
What do you think would be a way to fix the world today on the basis of how we look at social media and all these things when it comes to possessions? I mean, how many times do you turn on a song nowadays and it's all about having like a bunch of cars or doing a bunch of drugs or living this party lifestyle that we all hold so high and mighty?
Gosh, that's a really big question. You see, because I love stuff. Don't get me wrong, I
Oh,
love
for
stuff.
sure. I love clothes. I mean, I like toilet paper
Yeah,
too.
but I do not base my worth on them at all. Sort of another story of my life. I've had many stories in my life, but at one point, I was 24. I was moving house, and at 24, I didn't have like fridge freezers and washing machines like I have now. I had like bags of stuff.
You're talking to
Um,
someone who's in their 20s. I understand.
Yeah. So we loaded up the car. The landlord brought our deposit back late, so we couldn't move into the new flat straight away. And so we stayed with a friend overnight and left all of our stuff all packed into this car. Somebody broke into the car and literally stole everything. They didn't steal the car, they just smashed the car up, but they stole everything from the inside of the car. So I literally had the clothes I was walking around in, and that was it.
Damn.
Yeah.
Eh,
So I don't know. I think that for me was a massive, massive life lesson in, you know what? I can lose all my stuff, but I'm still here. I don't actually need my stuff to exist.
You still have air in your lungs, you know?
Yeah, I'm alive.
I think
And as long as I'm alive, it means that I can now create whatever it is that I want to
I think
from
a
that place.
good thing a lot of people need to do, where a lot of meditation is very helpful, it's more about just taking a slow down, you know, taking a nice deep breath at one point, and then eventually, you know, your problems start to get narrowed down. You know,
Hmm.
when you're overwhelmed, you're dealing with so many things, you're thinking about so many things at once that your brain is so active, you don't have time to process one thing at a time anymore. When you
No, I
start
don't.
trying to multitask your problems, you never get them done effectively.
No, no.
So
And, we talk about in the book as well, like a 21 breath meditation, I think is a fantastic, fantastic
21
way.
breaths.
21 breaths. Yeah.
Taking, you
Just
mean like
in
21 long breaths?
and out. And if you can do that to begin like this meditation practice, yeah, that was my way into meditation because I couldn't sit there. I couldn't sit there for, sort of 5 minutes. I'd get bored. I'd get like antsy, just like, oh, what's the point? Oh. So, yeah, I started with 21 breaths.
Do you
21
find that
breaths.
you want to start your day off like that? It feels like that's where you want to have a leveled mindset for the day. Or do you see that whenever you're feeling overwhelmed and not handling things effectively, if you feel like the tunnel's never going to end, that you should use the 21 breath count?
Um, whenever you need it, I recommend meditating every single day. I mean, I meditate at least twice a day, sometimes 3 times a day. My daughter, when she was 13, she had 6-hour heart surgery. It was supposed to be 2 hours, um, and it ended up being 6 hours, and she was awake for half of it at 13 years old, which is crazy. But yeah, the only way that I got through that was through meditation.
I think, we talk about a balance in life. I think to have a balance in life, you need to have a balance in oneself as well.
Yeah,
I mean,
completely.
it's different for everybody. Obviously, meditation works for some people, not for everyone, but more about taking the enjoyment of life. Got to enjoy the little things, that whole concept. I definitely think so. It's just, it sucks because we live in a world where money is what gets you those little things for a lot of
Well,
people.
the thing about money is, right, money gives you freedom, money gives you choice, more choice. But even without money, you still have both of those things. You still have both of those things. But money makes life easier. It really does. I absolutely plan on being as rich as I can possibly be because I can help more people when I'm rich. I know that my life will be easier when I am rich. Um, and don't get me wrong. I mean, in again, rich is all a perception. It's all a comparison thing, isn't it? What's rich for one person is not rich for another person.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Another man's trash is another man's treasure.
exactly. So everybody has their own levels of what they perceive to be rich. Everybody has their own levels of what is happiness, of what is peace. Um, and yeah, and you just can't keep comparing yourself to people. You really can't, because that way really is the way to doom and gloom. Because like I said before, you will always find somebody with more stuff than you've got. You will always find somebody with more choices, more freedoms.
Well, part
So,
of the living this lifestyle where we choose to look at other stuff, it's a jealousy aspect too. It's all it influences into our character and our
but the thing
nature.
about jealousy is, jealousy stems from a lack of trust in oneself that they can also have those things.
Yeah, that's why it's very hard for people to see that because nobody's ever focusing on themselves anymore. They're only
Yeah.
focusing on other people. When you start looking at, oh, that person has that, I don't have that. Oh, that person looks like that. Why do they look like that? Why do I look like this? Whether you're judging in a good way or a bad way, you're
Hmm.
still judging though. That word just turns into a different form of jealousy because you're not
Yeah.
actually paying attention to oneself. If you want a nice car, you want these things, then what do you want to do to get there? You're not going to be able to do what that person did to get the money that he has or get his options that he has, but you have an opportunity and ability about yourself that is surprisingly unique where you can
Yeah.
be able to obtain that. And a lot of people can't see that, and a lot of people can't have that even resonate in their head. Even while I say it, I'm still kind of saying it with like a blank kind of thought in my head. Like, it's so easy to say, but it is difficult to do.
Okay, so what stops you then from being uniquely you down to the nth degree?
I'm pretty unique. I
I
like
have,
it when I kind of express myself to people. They're like, "Is he a good guy or a bad guy?" And people are like, "He's just Robbie. You got to talk to him." I don't
yeah,
know what else to tell you. I mean, I see more of worth in communication, worth with just having conversation with people, than really worth with items. It really sucks that sadly that's not going to be able to pay the bills. It's not going to be able to pay certain things, but I definitely think like from the start we were kind of as people set on a very rocky foundation, especially here in America. I mean, we live in a world now where it seems to get anything someone else has to suffer. It makes it difficult. There's a lot of good influences out there, but they're not as, I guess, in the limelight as most of the bad negative influences. I mean, how many times you turn on the TV, it's just something negative, something where it just makes
yeah,
you want
but
to turn it off.
that's designed that way. That's designed because the powers that be prefer the little people to live in a state of fear.
That's
So
what I'm saying. Yeah, it makes
yeah,
it hard to see, the positivity when everything is so negative. I'm saying if there's going to be a change that this world needs to overtake or we as people need to do, is start being more positive.
yeah, no, absolutely.
And it makes it difficult because, oh, how can I be positive if this just happened? For instance, I wasn't in the best mood when my car broke down, but I'm sitting there waiting for the tow truck driver for an hour. He was supposed to be there in 15 minutes. So I'm sitting in my car and I'm like, oh, well, he's going to be here any minute. And then after a while, I was like, where is this guy? And I mean, immediately I see him. I get out of the car. I'm like, finally. And he's going and hooking up the truck. And I just look at him. I'm like, thanks, man, so much for helping me out right now. And a lot of
Right.
people would have taken that scenario to sit there and yell at him, call his manager, do whatever. And I was like, no, man, you're here now. Let's focus on the now.
Yes, absolutely. That is the, the trick. I think it's wonderful and, kind of amazing that, because you are, I know that you're a proper grown man and all of that, but but I'm nearly 50. So to me, you are really young to have learned all the things and have the insights and the understandings that you've got. And I think that's awesome. I really do. And I think that this is what's needed in the world. We
It's
need more people of your age to see the appreciation and the gratitude of this
all my
great.
knowledge or everything that I've gotten into my head has came from experiences from all these people I've talked to through the podcast and just people I associate with on my everyday life. It's turned me into, I like to think, a better person when it comes to the idea of, I live an introvert for a very long time. I didn't want to associate with anybody. I thought people were just negative and bad all the time. But we choose to let that be the template of people now. I
Hmm.
said, if we just took the
Yeah.
time, no matter who you are, no matter what you have, just sit down and have a conversation with someone for an hour or longer, you start to find things out. You start to learn more about yourself. You start to even have a conversation. It doesn't matter. People always consider, but it could turn to an argument. Well, you choose to let it turn into an argument, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Somebody
Yeah.
when an argument, yeah, there's always one side or whoever engages first or something, but you sit there and let that inflict onto you as an argument. I say no, there's never an argument. It's just conversation. You choose to hold it to be a bad one. If the person just wants to sit there, I've had people sit there and shove their opinions at me, tell me I'm wrong and everything. I'm just sitting there, start thinking more with an open mind.
Hmm.
It's all about understanding the person that got what they thought in their head or what they have in their life is all because of the road they chose to walk. Your life is
Yeah.
not going
No,
to be exactly
definitely.
the same.
and everybody has their own perceptions on things. So, and it goes through their perception filter of the experiences that they've had. So you're so very insightful and wise because of the experiences that you've had through the conversations. So other people might not have had that experience. Other people might not have ever heard of these sort of out of the box thoughts before. Yeah.
Out of the box, kind of like
Out of
out
the
of the
box. Out of the blank. I like. Yeah, I've just got that. Out of the blank.
It's crazy because I mean, insightful moments, especially like, I know we're on a time difference, but like at 5 a.m. and stuff. But like, I
Yeah.
do think kind of clearly and logically throughout the day, and obviously in moments where you're dealing with overwhelming stress. Like, when my car had another nail in it, the first thing I thought was definitely not clear and logical. It was more like, that's it, kick my car or something. But I ended up like, wait a minute, that's just going to affect me in the long run. Let's try and handle this and see what steps I had to do. And I was looking for advice at the time, and this just happened yesterday. So I mean, I was looking for advice. I was looking for people that were gonna, hey man, it's gonna be good, get positive encouragement. And I wasn't getting it anywhere. And I was like, damn, like, are we all just like, that's life? Like, is that everybody giving me that answer right now? And then one person, I put it up on Snapchat, like, another flat tire, great. And then some dude screenshotted it that I never thought in a million years would help me out. Shout out to Mitchell. And he was like, hey man, do you need a ride? And I was like, dude, I'm good, man. I'm waiting on a tow truck right now. But he's like, hey man, if you need anything, let me know. And I mean, me and this kid almost fought in school. Me and this kid haven't talked since we got out of high school. It's been like 6 years. And I'm like, man, like, to think that you can find help anywhere, even in the people that you wouldn't think would ever help you. Like, it's amazing to see the empathy that people will give off when they notice that someone is in need, especially.
Yeah, and I think that that's what we've got to focus on. That's what we've got to put our attention to, is the fact that there are amazing people in the world. And just because maybe the people that don't resonate with us have louder voices, and they seem more prevalent, when you really go looking for the positive people, for the helpful people, the people that will support you no matter what, then you will find them.
Do you
You will
find
find.
that with a lot of self-help writers, they kind of read self-help books themselves that pull them out of the slump? Is there one in particular that you wrote or read that pulled you out of this, or you just decided like you're just going to write down your thoughts and kind of tips for people to help with their life?
So before I became a coach, like literally just before I became a coach, I hated self-help books. I hated just the notion of them, the audacity of somebody telling me that they could help me. It really rubbed me up the wrong way. Um, so no, I was never a fan of self-help books at all. I really wasn't. This has come because I just see so much sadness and um, just isolation. People isolating themselves because they're living in fear of, you know, and they're living with like all the things that you've been talking about: the jealousy, the inadequacy, the lack of self-worth. And I know that this is kind of my message to the world, that there is another way. We don't have to live in the way that we have always been taught. So no, I mean, I have shelves of self-help books now, but most of them are to do with business. So like Think and Grow Rich, and things like that, Science of Getting Rich, which they were all written in like sort of 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. They're ancient.
That's why I like the concept of your book so much, is because like we're talking about like templates. It seems like everybody's forcing and telling you, oh, you do this, well, it's because you do that. Why don't you try being a better person? It's like, how about we get a self-help book that isn't making me feel like shit halfway through the read? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's all about coming from a more relative perspective, not really treating the person like a hurt bird, which is
No.
a lot of people talk about when they write self-help books. Like, oh, I'm not going to give you what you want to hear. I'm going to tell you how it is. And it's like, sometimes that's not always needed. Sometimes you're sitting there making a person feel even worse about themselves is not going to encourage them to want to become anything.
No, exactly. And it also encourages them to be a victim. And I don't really believe that anybody is a victim. Um, in the victim-y type stance. Things happen to people. People get raped and they are victims of rape, but it's a mindset whether they stay feeling like the world is just awful and the world is against them. That is a state of mind. And I think a lot of coaches and books and things like this come from a place of trying to save the world. And if you have a savior, then you have a victim. Does that make sense?
It does. I mean, it really resonates too. I do have to bring up this though, because I totally glossed over it. Usually when someone's from the UK, I always ask why you guys drive on the wrong side of the road.
I have no idea.
Well,
But when I came to LA last, not this summer just gone, the summer before, because my brother lives in LA. And yeah, I could not drive. I just flatly refused to drive on your highway.
it's funny because every time I mention it, someone's like, no, 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 you drive on the wrong side of the road. I was like, look, we do what we want. It's crazy because I mean, like I said, time zone differences, it's hard to schedule things, but
Yeah.
I was very fortunate, first of all, to be able to sit and talk with you. I mean, it was awesome, at least learning a little bit more about self-help too, and a different perspective to it too than what I normally see. I mean, do you ever think about, this is gonna be a weird question, but do you ever think about going back to the cakes, going back to anything like that? Like that was a passion at first, right? Like you didn't
Oh
just
yeah.
decide it was going to be a job. You decided like that all comes from a creativity aspect that you kind of
Hmm.
can release into your books in a whole nother form.
Yeah, yeah. But that's the thing. I mean, we all have different passions as we go through life, and I'm very much led by the emotion of passion, because passion isn't a thing. It's an emotion. It's a feeling. It's the energy that you put into a thing. Your passion is what makes you really excited, and following your passion is following your purpose. Yeah, because if this thing brings you joy, then that's the thing that you're supposed to be doing more of. So right now, no, I have absolutely no plans of going back to cakes, because it's no longer my passion. My passion is the coaching, it is the writing, it is the, chatting to people like this. I've absolutely loved this so much. Thank you so much for inviting me on.
No problem. I think it's a lot of people here like, how could you just lose your passion? Sometimes it's beneficial in a way. A passion can turn into a job a lot of the times, especially when you do it 24/7. It might not be your true thing. You can't stick on one thing for the rest of your life. The people that do find it ends up getting a little bit bland sometimes.
Exactly, yeah.
Like
But
I,
things you were passionate about when you were 14 years old, you're not going to have the same passions, are you?
No, I've been going to the gym every day for 7 years now, and it's became more of a job now. It's not, it is my stress relief.
Hmm.
It's been helping me recently, especially with all like tough times I've been going through. But it, like I said, at a point when there was nothing that was really bad, I was just kind of working, going to school, going to the gym, going to sleep, that type of concept. I picked up podcasting, and next thing I know, this has become a passion. This has become something.
Yeah.
And some people are like, why don't you turn it into a job? You make money off of. I'm like, no, because I'm not going to pay someone to have a conversation. And at the same time, I'm not going to get paid for the conversation. And it's like, I don't want to ever turn this into a job. I want this to be a passion of mine and keep it strictly to a fun aspect of things. It's
Hmm.
amazing being able to talk to people like yourself that go through things that people feel like, that might be out there going through something similar, that can hear this and be able to pull something from it. You know what I mean? It's all on that concept. Like, doesn't matter how many you post, doesn't matter any of this concept. It just matters, like, you don't need to listen to every single one, but listen to the ones that resonate with you the most. It's the concept
Yeah.
of like, I post one every day, sometimes twice a day. It's not
Wow.
because I think I'm so popular, or I think I'm like, oh, this number one hit. It's the concept of, there are so many people out there in this world that have a story and that have a conversation aspect to them. And first of all, have something unique about them. Everyone does. Doesn't matter if it's
Hmm.
good, bad, whatever you want to consider. We all have a voice, and that voice is meant to be heard. And this is my experience with you, hearing your voice and your unique story.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more.
Well, Janet, I really appreciate you doing the podcast. I want to give you here a minute at the end to kind of promote your content so where people can find your awesome stuff.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, so my book, Habits for Happiness, is available on Amazon, available in Kindle and paperback, 9.99. You can also find me at my website, which is janetmohapibankscoaching.com, or you can find me on Facebook. I really am the only Janet Mohapi-Banks in the world,
It's that middle
unless
name,
somebody's
though.
stolen my name.
Well, thank you so much, Janet, for being on the podcast. And thanks for listening to this episode of Out of the Blank.